Hi, team. Welcome to the first episode of the FDL Coaches Roundtable. Why I wanted to do this is because we have such an amazing coaching staff here at FDL, and it took us such a long time to build this amazing staff, and it's a wealth of knowledge. We have these great conversations all the time, and we were like, man, why don't we continue these conversations, recorded, share them with you guys, provide value, and show why we love to work together and why we have such an amazing coaching staff. And so what I did was I opened up my DMs, I asked for your questions, and we got a ton of them. And what we're gonna do on a weekly basis is cover these topics. So I'll put out on my Instagram story that we are gonna be covering these topics. You're gonna send in your DMs, and we're gonna pick the best ones to cover on that week's episode. So let me introduce Miguel and Austin. I'm going to let Miguel talk about why he's so special, and then Austin will do the same.
Yeah, so my name is Miguel Blacutt. I study in Canada at McGill University. I'm getting my Bachelor of Science in Nutritional Biochemistry. And after that, I'm going to be applying to get a PhD in exercise science. The reason I think I'm special is because I try to look at everything from both an evidence-based standpoint and also a practical standpoint. So I don't just blindly look at evidence. I don't just look at, well, this study said this, this, and this. We also combine it with what we see in the real world and how we can apply it to real athletes. Because if a study finds something, we just know that a study compares two things. And if a study finds that something is better than the other, we just know that we might have found the second worst thing, not exactly the best thing. So we also have to take into account practical application. So that's me. I'm the science guy. I'll let Austin go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Austin. I would say I mainly specialize in exercise mechanics, but I do also play a big role in terms of building sustainable nutrition. And I would say that I just want to grow up to be like Miguel in terms of my intelligence. So that's basically me.
Okay, so our first question is, would love you guys' input on meal separation, meaning meal timing based on hunger levels, even if it is under the standardized 2 hours. So I'm guessing she means it's just basic meal timing. Is there a difference in meal separation, meal timing? I mean, is that going to help with hunger levels? I think that's mainly what she's asking. But then we can dive a little bit deeper on if we spread out our meals, we're going to get a better result. So whichever one, if Austin, Miguel, whoever you guys want to go and tackle this first.
Yeah, I think Miguel can touch on the kind of the science and what the research says, and then I'll just kind of stem off that, and you can stem off that.
Beautiful. That'll be a good model. So we'll go with the research, then the actual practical application.
Yeah.
Cool. So when we discuss meal timing, really what we look to optimize is the muscle protein synthesis response of each meal. We know that when you consume about 20 to 40 grams of a high quality protein source, you elevate muscle protein synthesis. This is the process through which you synthesize muscle from protein. Now, when you consume a high protein meal, you will elevate this for about 2.5 to 5 hours. And contrary to popular belief and contrary to popular bro belief, when you elevate your levels of amino acids from the protein meal, they will stay elevated for about 2.5 hours. And during this time, your body will have something that's called the refractory response to protein, meaning that it is desensitized to further protein. So amino acids, let's say they're here and you have a protein-rich meal and they peak for 2.5 hours. If you have another bolus of amino acids of protein during that time, your body is insensitive to it and it will actually not respond in an optimal way. You will not further elicit a protein synthesis response. So if you are consuming a meal that's high in protein about like every 2 hours, then what you're really missing out on is having each meal cause a great amount of protein synthesis. Each meal cause a great amount of muscle building. So in the research, what we have seen is that what is optimal is to have about 4 to 5 protein feedings per day spread between 3 to 5 hours. Because if you wait 3 hours between protein feedings, what will happen is that those amino acid levels are going to start to taper off, and your body is going to become sensitive to them. Meaning that if you hit it with another dosage of protein, you are going to elevate muscle protein synthesis again. So that is the first part of the question. If you want to optimize protein synthesis, consume about 4 to 5 meals spread between 3 to 5 hours apart. Now, in terms of hunger, your body regulates hunger based on meal entrainment. So your body becomes hungry based on how many times you get it accustomed to eat. So if you have accustomed yourself to eat every 2 hours, then your body is going to secrete a very wide array of hormones to make you hungry every 2 hours. But then if you start to spread it out, let's say every 4 hours, 6 hours, if you go into intermittent fasting, your body is very, very responsive to that, and it will adjust to make you hungry at those times. So if you find it inefficient, if you don't like getting hungry every 2 hours, then start to spread it out. Maybe eat every 3 hours, every 4 hours, and your body is going to start to adapt, and you're going to start to become hungry based on what you entrain your body to become hungry for. So that's my scientific response.
Can I just ask a quick question real quick? So when you hear about muscle protein synthesis, and it's more of a, it's not proven that that's going, am I wrong?
No, it's very well proven. It's very well.
You broke up, Miguel.
If you can hear me, in terms of when he connects back, I think in terms of protein feedings, I think it's a really good idea to think in meals of protein feedings instead of actually just thinking about every macronutrient, and looking further into it in sense of the meal entrainment. So just how many times you're structuring your food throughout the day, I think it's super relative to your schedule. So if 4 meals is good for you, I think 4 meals is great. And that's what you should try to customize yourself to. We lost Miguel. But in terms of kind of where the research is in the meal pattern, the better you can stick to a meal pattern, the better adherence has been found to be. So
that's the biggest thing. And that's one thing I wanted to ask him is, okay, how much, like just at a guesstimation, how much extra benefit are you getting from the being more aware of the protein feedings? And so say, for example, I say, hey, you need to have 5 protein feedings a day. It stresses you the hell out. Mm-hmm. So then your stress levels are so much higher. Thus, maybe it affects your recovery. You're not able to hit your workouts as hard. And you just don't know. So like, I think that's the biggest factor out of everything.
I think that I think the total protein throughout the day matters most. Mm-hmm. And then comes the frequency of the protein feeding in itself. So I think that's still, vastly under review of what I've seen in the literature. But in terms of everything, I think total protein intake throughout the day is superior to being so obsessive over get it every 4.5 hours. So I think in terms of that, it's crucial.
One good thing, and something that's big in the intermittent fasting community is it, and I'd like to Miguel's take on this as well, but is it okay in the mornings, if you like to delay your first meal, to supplement with amino acids? And does that actually give a similar or a good enough response to if you actually did have a whole food protein feeding?
I think in terms of that, you are looking for I think as long as you hit, this is my knowledge of it, as long as you hit that leucine threshold, you're good. So for a person my size, that tends to be around 3 to 5 grams of leucine. So that would be typical of people our size. So I think, yeah, a serving of BCAAs, if you're intermittent fasting, can be great, a great supplemental, vice for that feeding.
Yeah, that's something I personally do, and I enjoy. I just personally am just like with habits. I personally am not a morning person. I just don't like food in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I like coffee in the morning. It hits me harder.
I'm with you on that one.
I don't have to worry about food. I like to win my day until my first meal. So I wake up in the morning and the last thing I want to worry about is food. That's it. I want to just wake up, get everything I need to get done, and then I can focus on the food. And I think a lot of people are like that.
I do too.
I feel like a lot of people eat breakfast because they have to eat breakfast. They think they have to eat breakfast. They're not really hungry.
What's the massive misnomer we've grown up with our whole life? Breakfast is the most important meal, and that's not necessarily true.
I know.
At all. So.
You have to fire up your metabolism. So yeah. I don't see that. But it's very interesting with the hunger aspect. That is so true, though. Many people have been eating breakfast their whole lives, and I don't think they could not eat breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have them kind of delay their first meal for a couple weeks. And then what happens, their hunger changes. And this happens over time. It's just a gradual process, and it's amazing how that works. And it's amazing. So for example, I did the 10,000 calorie challenge, and for the 2 weeks after it, my hunger hormones were gone. But it's amazing what happens is in the research, as you get more and more overweight, the less sensitive direct causation, your leptin and ghrelin become, and thus you eat a 10,000 calorie meal and that becomes the norm. Mm-hmm. Or your body doesn't even know it's overfeeding anymore. It's unbelievable. I felt like I was going to throw up in 2 weeks afterwards because I just was not hungry. I was just eating. I need to eat something. It's insane. It's scary. It's scary because a lot of people have no clue if they're hungry or not.
Yeah. It took me a long time after dieting down originally to actually know what hungry was. Other than being on a structured plan in terms of, I eat 4 times a day. I get this many protein feedings throughout the day. And then, based on when my workout is during the day, I'm either getting carbs mainly or fats with that protein feeding. So yeah, in terms of the question, I think just do what's best for you. Think protein first in terms of when you do get to eat a meal, think about protein first. So get within that 20 to 40 grams per meal if you can. And then if you're close to the workout, pre or post, try some carbs with it. If you're not, fats is good. That's a good time to get in your dietary fats. So, but again, you can have carbs and fats at the same time as well. So that's not going to ruin your progress by any means.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is don't overthink it.
Yeah. The moral of the story is it doesn't really don't overthink
it. Matters, but it doesn't really matter to most of you guys. Okay. The big consensus was we got multiple questions on sugar. But the first one was, hey, Zach, when cutting, is there a difference between getting sugar from fruits or from processed foods, or is it sugar just sugar no matter what it comes from? So this is a huge, healthy natural sugars versus artificial sugars, and it's huge divide. And this would be really cool to get a cool take on this and actually help people understand the difference between the two, or if there is a difference between the two. So what exactly is your take on this?
Yeah. So my take on, let's forget, I think forgetting about the physiological or cellular level in terms of like muscle growth and all of these things, like we need to get down to what's important, and that's overall health and
Yes.
normally fat loss for the people that are going to be watching this. So I would say in terms of how do you feel, is the number one question you should ask yourself. So there are definitely some artificial sweeteners that if I have them, I feel bad. Not bad in terms of, oh, I ate that, I feel bad. It's my digestion gets thrown off. I may get some indigestion or get a little gassy, or just I get disrupted. And in return, that affects, cognition and everything else. So I tend to steer clear of certain artificial sweeteners, whereas other ones don't do that. So there are definitely some that do and some that don't.
Have you noticed, like, can you give like some personal examples of certain artificial sweeteners that do bother you? And for some people who don't understand what those are, like what kind of foods they're usually found in?
Yeah. So I can't remember the specific ones in terms of the names, like the names of the artificial sweeteners themselves that I react to worse. But things like, and I notice it's a dose response as well. So if I have a certain threshold at which I can eat that food and then it goes bad from there. So there's a certain point, and you'll resonate with this. There's a certain point in the pint of Halo Top that I just don't feel real well anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I eat the whole pint, you know what I mean? Like if I eat half the pint, I'm good. But if I get past that point in one serving or in one sitting, I don't feel well.
Yeah.
So I think it's a dose.
And anybody who says they don't are freaking liars.
Yeah,
like,
they do.
Erythritol it's a cool tool, but it's so powerful that it's like your body it's very foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be one of the better ways to sweeten anything nowadays, and it's still evolving over time, but it's still something that it's funny. So erythritol isn't in a lot of things. So our body is used to what it has to digest most, and erythritol is actually a new type of sweetener, low calorie, 0 calorie sweetener that is being added in now. And so what my synopsis is that over time, when it's in more things, we're going to become more accustomed to digesting it. It's just like with dairy. If you cut out dairy for a long period of time and then you put it back in, you're going to have a hard time digesting it. Our body is as good as what it has to digest the most.
Yeah, and that goes down to your gut and your microbiome is,
yes.
If you don't eat it, if you don't use it, you lose it, sort of thing. So if you don't, you're just losing the bacteria in your gut, or those enzymes to actually break down. Let's say if it's milk, it's that lactose, it's that sugar in the milk. So you're losing that, the enzyme activity. You're losing the bacteria in the gut itself. So yeah, I mean, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And so in terms of that, I mean, having a little bit of everything in terms of, artificial sweetener, just having a little bit of everything kind of prepares you that if you do get a little bit of it, your body's seen it before. I think that's a good idea, but I think it is a dose response thing. And again, sugar and fruit is natural, and that should not be worried about in the slightest. Like, you need to eat fruits and veggies. You need fiber in your diet. You need micronutrients, antioxidants. Like, you need these things to function. And so.
And I think one of the questions is, okay, so say if I get sugar from an Oreo, or I get sugar from an apple or a strawberry, how should I view that? And I think my personal take on this is, I personally, I don't see the difference sugar wise. I see like I have a bucket. Every single day I have a bucket of micronutrients I need to hit. That's my goal. And so if I'm just getting all my sugar intake from, and fiber as well. So if I'm getting all my sugar intake from things like Oreos, things like Skittles, all these like candies, everything like that, first off, I'm not going to hit my fiber. Second off, I'm probably going to be hungry because these things are not very satiating. Third, I'm not going to hit my micronutrients. So there's got to be balance. You going into one extreme is not going to make you any better. If you consume all of your sugar from fruits and veggies, then I think that's okay. But if it's going to stress you out by not being able to fit in or have an Oreo or have something like that with added sugars to it, I think that's bad. I think the added stress is actually worse off for you. I think 100% is worse than 80% if it causes you stress.
And it's what you're going to stick to, right? So yes. Let's say you're a week. Usually you hear of people going, yeah. And it's usually always in the past tense, right? I went no sugar. I heard a past tense there. So you're doing sugar now. You're eating sugar. It's like, yeah, I couldn't stick to it. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. You know what I mean? So you got to also adapt. Our bodies are trying to still adapt to the society we live in now. And it's going to be a slow process. So
absolutely.
We just have to do the best we can.
Sustainability is the number one factor. That's the most important thing over everything else.
Couldn't agree more.
So there was a study done by, I think it was like Sachs and colleagues, where they looked at several different carbohydrate diets, and they looked at high carb, high GI diet, high carb, low GI diet, and so essentially I'll start that over. Okay, yeah. So there was a study done by Sachs and colleagues where they looked at two different diets. They looked at a high GI, high carb diet and a low GI, high carb diet. So essentially, like, one of them was high sugar and then the other one was low sugar, high fiber. And they looked at how these things affected blood markers, lipid levels, cholesterol levels, just overall health. And what they found is that when calories were equated, both diets led people to better health. They both improved blood markers. They both improved the blood lipid profiles. And both people, by all assessments and tests, had exactly the same health. The only difference is that the people who consumed a high sugar diet, they had a little bit higher cholesterol, but that's just because of fiber. We know that fiber causes the excretion of something called bile. And when bile is excreted, the body makes more bile out of cholesterol. Mm-hmm. So if you were to consume a high sugar diet, but you had fiber in there, then I am sure that all blood markers would be exactly alike. So what this tells us is that when you consume a high sugar diet, but you also account for fiber, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, you can be just as healthy as the bro who is eating brown rice for every single meal.
Boom.
That's all that needs to be said.
That's all that's it. I mean,
you got Miguel.
Yeah. So could you cover the topic of the fructose?
Yeah. So people, look at fruit and they see it has a high sugar content and get all freaked out about it. When you look at how we evolved over the last 6 million years, out of those 6, during 5 million years, fruit was our primary energy source. There is absolutely no reason for fruit to be bad for us. The sugar in fruit, fructose, we have developed a very efficient way of breaking it down, a very healthy way of breaking it down. And to my knowledge, there is absolutely no study that has shown that fructose is bad for you. The studies that have shown that fructose might have some sort of an effect on insulin and cholesterol is studies where they look at fructose in isolation. So if you are consuming a massive amount of fructose in isolation, then it could have some sort of effect on insulin. However, you never find this in nature. In every fruit, in every natural thing that I can possibly think of, fructose is also with glucose. And when you combine the two, there is absolutely no negative side effect. So you can pretty much consume all the fruit you want, and it won't be bad for you, because fructose in fruit is always accompanied by glucose, and fructose plus glucose is not bad for you.
And one thing we always have to stress is you can consume as much fruit as you want when calories and your carbohydrates are equated for. Like that, when we make any type of reference like that, know that macros are equated. So
yeah,
macros always matter.
Macros always matter. The hierarchy of importance are caloric goals and needs.
Yeah, if you go freely the banana girl mode and have 30 bananas a day, and you
that becomes a potassium issue, and your heart might stop.
Yeah, you might get constipated.
Yeah, so the exact question was when and how to adjust macros on a cut. So there's many different things that are going to happen throughout your cut that will cause a plateau, and and obviously you don't want to wait till a plateau. You kind of want to be active in figuring out, you want to be actually eating as much food as possible while losing weight or losing body fat. I mean, I think we can both agree on that, but the way many people do it, it varies, the changes, but I believe there is a better way of doing it. And that's where the coach-client relationship comes in, and the sustainability, and do you think your client can actually adhere, and how much time you have, all these different factors. So I'm going to let you kind of go into your process, and we'll see where it goes.
Absolutely. So in terms of looking at, and this is where the coach-client relationship really comes into play. So, said client, we'll call him John. Let's say John, is 4 weeks into his fat loss phase, and let's say we've hit a plateau, or we can kind of sense we're about to hit a plateau, and we need to make an adjustment. In terms of what we change, well, there's a host of things we could change. We could lower carbs, we could lower fat, which in return is just going to lower caloric balance. So it's going to put him deeper into a deficit. Or we can keep food the same and add cardio. Now, what to change is usually the question, right? People know those two things. It's usually not a question of what we know. It's what to implement. And my best piece of advice is, let's say John is an absolute workhorse. Miguel is back, folks. Miguel is back. Let's say John is an absolute workhorse, and he cannot justify, John can't justify, cardio in his schedule right now. So that means we need to take it out of food. We can't do cardio right now because that's going to come into adherence, right? He's going to be extremely stressed if we take it to the cardio route first. So we take food away from John first. You can start with a simple 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates. You can drop that. See if that can't kickstart something. But yeah, I think in terms of what to adjust first is the number one thing in looking at just that coach-client relationship. If you're with a coach or if you're not with a coach, you really just need to look at where it's best going to suit you in the long term of consistency and adherence.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed is like the busier somebody is, like actually busy, the more you can actually pull from food, because obviously they're not moving as much. They're distracted. They're busy. They're not food focused because they have other things that got to get done. And being busy is the best way to not to be good during a caloric deficit, because you're not having to like be bored. We eat out of boredom more than anything else.
Yeah, I would say most of my clients eat mostly out of boredom.
It's unbelievable. Like I'm becoming more self-aware of that. I'm just like thinking like, wow, what happens on days where I just like, I go and my hunger's gone. I'm just so busy. I'm immersed in what I'm doing. Well, and I'm not like, it's because I was busy. Like, that's it. Like, well, what happens on days where it's a little bit slower and like, I'm like, dang, like, I'm just like thinking about food. Like, I just want to eat. And like, we eat out of just boredom. It's crazy. So, yeah, it's just, and then you look at somebody who has a lot more time on their hands. Maybe you would allow them more cardio because they have that time. They need something to keep them busy, which, and so instead of eating, and it'll help provide a little bit more calorie expenditure and put them in that deficit. Miguel, what do you think about this topic, and how would you add on to this? Do you like to add a little bit of both, or that's my personal approach. I like to kind of take a little bit from both. But Miguel, what do you think of that? How would you go through this process of adjusting somebody's macros or cardio?
So when I adjust someone's macros, we have to understand that the body is very, very adaptive. So you can't just, let's say, decrease somebody's carbs by 5 grams, because that's something that is going to be very, very easy for the body to adapt to. So when we do decrease macros, calories, what I like to do is I will take between 5 to 10% away from calories. And I will calculate so that it's about a 50-50 split between carbs and fats. However, at one point, you can no longer decrease from fats, because this is going to be terrible for overall health, hormone function, brain function. So I will decrease in about a 50-50 split from carbs to fats until I get about to 35 grams of fat for females and 45 grams of fat for men. I don't like to go any lower than that, and I typically never do. Then with cardio, what's interesting about cardio is that people tend to think of cardio as, okay, well, the elliptical said we did 400 calories, right? So you think, oh, okay, well, I can eat 400 calories more food. I created a 400 calorie deficit. What you don't understand is, or what most people don't understand, is that those calories would have been burned anyways. So if you were to just sit around, if you were to meal prep, you would have spent some calories. Either way, it's not like you're going from 0 to 400. That hour that it took you to burn the 400 or 500 calories maybe you would have burned 200 or 300, depending on what you were doing. So we don't really know how many extra calories you are burning on that cardio session.
That's super interesting, Miguel. Like, you just raised a point I've never really thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
exactly.
Substitution, it's like, yes, you're burning 400 calories during this moment in time, and yes, that those numbers are skewed like crazy, but like, what would you have been doing otherwise?
Exactly. And
that's
even
very,
if you were laying down, you would have, like, in that hour, you probably would have burnt 100, 150 calories, depending on how big you are, how muscular you are. So you aren't truly burning you are not earning 400 calories of food. And in addition to that, the cardio machine is very, very inaccurate. So you really have no idea how many more extra calories you are burning. Because of that, when I make a cardio adjustment, I make sure it's significant. So if I'm having someone do 400 calories of cardio, then the next adjustment is going to be like 700 to 800, because then I know for sure I am creating an extra caloric burn. I know that I am making such a drastic increase that it's going to be there, because you are not just going to negate 400 calories worth of cardio. That's like, that would be extreme. And also the thing with cardio is that when we add in cardio, we see that non-exercise activity thermogenesis throughout the day goes down. So I might give someone an extra, let's say I give someone an extra 100 calories worth of cardio. Cool. Then they stop tapping their feet. They stop speaking with their hands. They, stop bouncing around, bobbing their head to music. And before you know it, they can almost completely negate those extra 100 calories of cardio.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's me 100,000%. Like I realize that so much. Like when I have to, and that's why like during this cut, like I've made sure to not do too much.
Exactly.
Do too much cardio. Like just knowing that it's just enough, something that as a warm up and cool down for my workout.
I
Like
would
that's
say
really it.
one easy way to kind of negate that decrease in NEAT would be to, before you start your cut, take a measurement of what you're actually doing. If you're walking around a lot, and this is something that I think we can add to our intake form. I'd be interested to do that, because are you someone who walks around a lot? Are you someone who taps your foot in class? Are you someone who bops around to music and dances around their house a lot? And then 6 weeks from now, if we have a plateau and we've made all the adjustments we know how to make and we're still plateauing, then we go back to those notes and say, are you still walking around a lot? Are you still dancing around your house? Are you still, and I bet the answer is no. So
Yeah, and that's why the step trackers are so accurate now, because people want to be able to decrease calories and know that, well, I'm not just being lazy now.
Yeah, no, that was cool. That was really cool.
And also, like in the literature, we see that people get more efficient at cardio. So for example, like you might have started on the elliptical, like bouncing around, like being all happy. And then before you know it, like people actually become more efficient at cardio. So even though the machine is telling you that you are still burning those extra 400 calories, you're just kind of like slouching into every step. You're just becoming more efficient at doing cardio. So maybe before you were truly burning 400 calories worth of cardio, but now you become so efficient and so lazy at doing cardio that you might have decreased how many calories you're actually burning.
And thus, too, you're doing more cardio. Thus, your adaptation to cardio is that much better, too. You're becoming better at that skill. Your body sees it as something that is demanded. Thus, you will burn less calories because of that.
Oh, yeah, and it's a great thing, evolutionary speaking. Like, if you're in a calorie deficit and you can become more efficient at your daily activities, that's a great thing. For bodybuilders, not so much.
If you're trying to just lose weight, it's not so much either. Not for bodybuilders in general, just for anyone.
Just anyone losing weight, yeah.
No, that was good. That was very interesting. I never really thought of it that way. So that's awesome. So
and I take the same approach like when talking about food. People think like if they have a really, really big meal, like an untracked meal, they think, okay, well, I ate 1,000 calories, like a 1,500 calorie meal. It's like, well, your regular meal might have had like 300 to 500 calories. So you're not going, it's not like you would have not eaten for that entire day.
And then you can think of, okay, what are the calories being burned digesting all that food?
Yeah.
What are the increase of NEAT? What will come from it?
Yeah, it's not 0 to 100. It's not all or nothing.
Yeah, it's not, it's simple, but it's not as simple as it's. I love it. Okay, so we wanted to wait till you got back on to cover the topic of alcohol.
Oh, wait. I just wanted to say one thing about the protein thing.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Then maybe we can like put it back in there and be like, Miguel got cut out.
We'll work some magic.
Yeah. So yeah, just what I wanted to say is that no, like you had said that it is theoretical, but no, it's actually like very well proven. When you give someone a high protein meal, you can track the anabolic gene expression, you can track protein biochemical pathways, and we can very visibly see that when you give someone those 20 grams of protein, muscle protein synthesis does go up, and it does stay elevated for about 3 to 5 hours, while the body remains insensitive to protein for about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Okay, so, and it says the protein turnover rate. So whenever you take in protein, it's not the same with carbs and fats. Carbs and fats can really be stored. Protein is cycled through very quickly, just like you said.
Yeah, because the body has no way of storing protein.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so me and Austin talked about this topic of, okay, what if we have somebody that stresses about getting their protein in, like you said, and this added stress increases their stress levels to where it takes away from their recovery. It really is a big stressor on them.
Mm-hmm.
what would your take be? And then also on top of that, how much like you guesstimate the benefit will be if you maximize this versus if you are somebody who is doing maybe 2 meals a day, 2 feedings, or 3 feedings versus 5 feedings?
Also,
I think
I want to add also that protein is equated. So
protein is equated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So between 3 to 5, not much at all. Like a very, very small difference. Between 1 to 3, there would be a bigger difference. It's still not like a huge difference, but maybe like a 5 to 10% difference.
Okay, can I chime in just real quick? So, for example, I want to take my own personal experience. I like to, I don't like to eat early in the morning. I don't enjoy it. It doesn't give me much satisfaction. I like my coffee to get right into my system, my caffeine, and I like to get right into workflow, getting right in the zone and winning my day before I have to eat anything, getting everything done so I can truly enjoy my food. I love my food. And as you know, I'm a creative, so I need to have brain space in order to, and also more macros to play with in order to create more value to people who follow me. Like that's what I'm known for.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do in the mornings is I supplement with some BCAAs. What is your take on that versus me taking in a whole food source?
So going back to hunger entrainment, your body is going to regulate to what you do.
Yes.
We are constantly told that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That is because when they look at breakfast studies and they look at people who have breakfast versus the ones that don't, what they are really looking at is they're looking at people who sometimes have breakfast, sometimes skip it, and people who always have breakfast. If you are to get someone who consistently skips breakfast versus someone who consistently has breakfast, the results are going to be exactly the same. It's just what you get your body accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to BCAAs, I am aware of no study that has shown that when protein is equated, that BCAAs have any sort of an impact.
Okay, so for example, so me taking in 180, so let's just say this right here. So say I wake up at 7 a.m. and my first protein feeding isn't until 11:30 a.m., 12 noontime. And I supplement with BCAAs, and I don't supplement with BCAAs, I'm still hitting 100 grams of protein either way from whole food sources.
Mm-hmm.
Do I get any extra benefit from taking those BCAAs?
No.
Zero.
As far as I'm concerned, in all the studies where protein has been equated, BCAAs have shown no difference. And this is actually like common in people who do intermittent fasting and think, okay, well, I might as well get some amino acids in me like before my workout. And they look, I can't remember the reference right now, but they actually looked at that. They looked at people who skipped, who did like a sort of a fast, but just had branched chain amino acids before their workout. No difference when protein was equated.
Interesting. So that has I mean, yeah, the protein turnover rate, I mean, we're very aware of that. If by taking BCAAs, that does nothing to that turnover rate. The flow of amino acids, nothing.
No, especially because like when you're consuming enough protein, like I said, your body is going to have amino acids in the blood. And then if you already spiked protein synthesis, if you have some amino acids in there already, then consuming additional amino acids won't really do much for further spiking it. There is some research to show that if you have a protein-rich meal and then let's say that you have egg whites, a very fast source of protein, the amino acids get in there very, very quickly. If you have, let's say, BCAAs 2 hours after that, it can keep protein synthesis elevated. However, in practical application, it really doesn't amount to muscle at all. Like it's just theoretical. We haven't seen that it actually makes any sort of a difference in muscle building.
That's interesting. Could you explain why, if we're focused on amino acid profile, especially leucine, so much, why is it the fact that if we're looking at similar amino acids going into the body, why BCAAs do not work rather than a whole food source if we're getting similar amino acid profiles. Because I'm just thinking of what is somebody watching this going to think? Okay, if I look at my meal, but then I look at my BCAAs and it says a similar amino acid profile, what's the difference?
When you consume branched chain amino acids in isolation, they don't contain enough of the other essential amino acids to actually support a sustainable protein synthesis response. When you have a full spectrum of amino acids, you actually have something that can sustain a protein synthesis response. And actually, this is also the case when you look at something like a very, very hydrolyzed whey protein, like the very 99% WPI, like super hydrolyzed whey proteins. Even those proteins do not have enough of the other amino acids to support a very long protein synthesis response.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the other, like having carbs in that meal as well, is going to help fuel that MPS response as well.
Yeah. So there was one study where they looked at carbs, protein, and carbs plus protein, and they looked at the biochemical signaling of protein synthesis. And what they saw is that, okay, let's say that this is baseline protein synthesis. When they gave carbs, protein synthesis stayed here. And this is common sense. We know that the carbs by themselves do not elevate protein synthesis. When they gave protein, it had a very significant response in protein synthesis. And then when they gave carbs plus protein, it elevated just a little bit more. So we know that if we have a mixed meal of protein plus some carbs, somewhere around, again, upwards of 20 grams of carbs, that is going to enhance the protein synthesis response to a meal.
Interesting. It's a team, like it's balance.
Yeah.
No extremes. Would you say this is part of the reason why they've shown that the keto diet is not as great for muscle building?
Actually, they haven't shown that. And the reason for that is because if you are taking in lots of protein, we know that protein actually is very insulinogenic. People think like, oh, insulin is bad, carbs are bad. Protein is just as insulinogenic as carbs. And if you are to consume a meal that is very, very high in protein, you will actually spike insulin enough to obtain almost a protein plus carbs response.
Mm-hmm. The gluconeogenesis.
Well, more than anything, it's we have seen that the branched chain amino acids themselves increase insulin a lot. So also like that's another thing with intermittent fasting. People say, oh, well, we got to keep insulin down throughout the day. And then they'll have a ton of BCAAs, not realizing that BCAAs spike insulin a lot.
Interesting.
But in the insulin failure doesn't really do anything to you.
Well, good. That's where your research.
Going back to your original question, if someone were to be stressing out about protein synthesis, like multiple feedings, we have seen that if you have all your protein feedings in 1 versus 4, let's say you need 180 grams of protein. If you have 180 grams of protein in one meal, it cannot make up for the protein synthesis effect of having it spread out between 3 to 4.
Okay. And is there any type of anecdotal percentage base that you can kind of give benefit wise? So for example, if you do it 1 meal versus 4, how much you're losing out on, or how much protein synthesis you're losing out on over the span of a day, things like that. Is there anything in the research showing that?
Not really, but I would say somewhere between probably 5 to 10%. It's not very large at all. We know that adherence is king. So guys who are listening, if you can stick to intermittent fasting, if that is what allows you to stick to your diet, to get your protein in, then by all means, do it. Do not try to go for 4 meals a day if you know you cannot stick to that, because I much rather you stick to your overall calories and overall macros than stress about getting your protein feedings in. It is a very small difference. And if you're just starting out, even if you're an intermediate, like it probably won't make a difference at all. If you're talking about someone who's advanced, then maybe we are looking at some sort of a difference.
Absolutely. So trying to think, I mean, do we want to cover the topic of entrepreneurship just briefly? I think that's a whole new.
Yeah, I think we keep that in a separate one.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think that would be like one that we could literally spend. I could say, hey, give me your questions about entrepreneurship. And
you know what would be cool is have one with like just you and Steven talking about like entrepreneurship, marketing.
Yeah, I'd definitely get Steve on here. That'd be definitely interesting. But yeah, this was great. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm sure everybody else will. This was super valuable, and this is going to evolve over time. These FDL coach roundtables, these FDL coaches roundtable. I'm excited. I'm excited to learn myself, and I think we're going to be able to provide a ton of value. So if you guys watch this, please give the video a thumbs up. Actually, leave a lot of your questions below because we will take those into account. What we're going to probably start doing is figuring out a theme for each one of these. And we're going to take the top 5 questions from each theme. So if you say a question below, we will definitely take that into account for this next video or future videos. So please also subscribe because we have more of these roundtables coming. Also, we're going to have Austin and Miguel's social media platforms linked below. So make sure you check them out as well because we're trying to change the game. As you can see, we have a great dynamic here, and I'm so blessed to have them on the team. They're going to make me better. That's what it's all about. So any closing words that you guys have that you want to say to everybody watching?
Miguel?
Just thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate that you guys take the time to actually become to want to gain knowledge on this. It means a lot that you're checking us out.
Austin, give us your wise beard.
Yeah, no, I really do appreciate just people listening and their willingness to learn and want to be better. I think that's a massive step in any self-improvement. But yeah, man, I send love from Australia and just glad to be here.
And hopefully soon from Austin, Texas.
Very soon from Austin, Texas.
But yeah, we have so many people saying what is right, what is wrong. We try and take an unbiased approach to all of this, and we have a great dynamic. We have somebody who, like myself, I'm still learning, but I have a good base of knowledge. I focus more on lifestyle and sustainability and giving people great tools and being a connector. That's what I see the most, and being very relatable. But then I understand where my weaknesses are, and I don't enjoy doing the research, but I love being told by people I trust what's true. And Miguel does so much of the research. Austin does so much of the research, and we have a great dynamic of combining that into sustainability and lifestyle. And that is what this Coaches Roundtable is about. So thanks again. Thanks so much for watching another episode. Well, the first episode in the bag. And we hope to see you guys next week. So God bless, my friends. All right, dudes, we're out.
See you guys.